The CIA.
The CIA.
The CIA.
The CIA.
The CIA.
Assassinations, coups, human rights abuses. These aren't the actions of a rogue gang, they're the dark legacy of the US's Central Intelligence Agency. Since its inception in 1947, the CIA has engineered chaos across the globe. Its official mission is to safeguard national security by gathering intelligence on foreign countries. But what its mission statement doesn't say is that the agency's covert operations come at the expense of foreign nations and innocent civilians, or what the CIA simply sees as collateral damage.
The CIA, from the very beginning, at least as early as 1951, has used the information that it has collected. And it has used the information in order to penetrate and to manipulate the institutions of power in whatever country it is operating in order to influence the course of events in those countries.
The CIA's covert actions have left deep scars on nations worldwide, often sowing chaos, fueling instability, and empowering dictatorships in the name of American interests. Here are some of the CIA's most notorious operations that reveal the true face of the agency. The CIA's practice of using humans as pawns in its quest for absolute control began on US soil. Project MKUltra, launched in 1953, was a secret program designed to develop mind control techniques for interrogation and manipulation. For approximately 2 decades, drugs like LSD and various amphetamines were administered to largely unwitting subjects across more than 80 institutions in the US and Canada, alongside brutal practices such as sensory deprivation and electroshocks. Test subjects included prisoners, psychiatric patients, soldiers, and civilians, with many tested on without their consent or full knowledge of the drug's names or effects.
I was there for a while and I thought, I don't want to stay here, and I started to run away from the hospital, and they grabbed me and then they put me on sleep treatment. And they kept you asleep for 23 days. And while I was asleep, they were shocking the heck out of me with electric shocks and playing tapes.
In 1973, CIA Director Richard Helms ordered all files on MKUltra destroyed, burying evidence of the illicit experiments and blocking the possibility of a full investigation. Only the CIA could get away with drugging unsuspecting civilians without facing consequences, and the agency would evade responsibility for countless additional atrocities. During the Cold War, the CIA secretly recruited hundreds of journalists, editors, and media executives working for domestic and international media. The goal? To control the news and spread US propaganda by funding a vast network of media operatives. The plan was simple: fund a network of influential media pundits to control and restrict the narrative to what best served the US's interests.
At CBS, we had been contacted by the CIA. As a matter of fact, by the time I became the head of the whole news and public affairs operation in 1954, ships had been established, and I was told about them and asked if I'd carry on with them.
In 2017, WikiLeaks published what it called Vault 7, a trove of CIA documents revealing the agency's ability to hack into smartphones, computers, smart TVs, cars, and even internet routers. The documents expose how the CIA's surveillance programs could capture texts, voice calls, and data from Apple, Google, and Android devices, giving the agency unprecedented access to private lives worldwide. Whether tapping into the minds of Americans, controlling mainstream media, or hacking the device in your hand, the CIA's goal has been consistent: to infiltrate and influence. By now, it's common knowledge that the US's diplomatic and military support for democracy and freedom abroad is almost always a front for covert operations that tip the scales in favor of Washington's geopolitical agenda.
Any movement that comes to power with the idea of providing for all the people and of escaping the control of the United States and its economy, let's say the corporations and so forth, then that is bad news here in the United States in the upper circles of power.
When Iranian Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh came to power in 1951, his nationalist government had a very different vision for ruling the country than the pro-Western elites of Iran. Determined to reclaim their country's own resources, the Iranian parliament voted to nationalize Iran's oil industry, which up until that point was under British control. Unwilling to lose their grip on oil-rich Iran, the CIA, alongside British intelligence, orchestrated a coup in 1953 to overthrow Mossadegh and confer full power to Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, who had inherited power in 1941 as part of the Pahlavi dynasty. With the approval of then US President Dwight Eisenhower, the CIA funded propaganda, bribed Iranian officials, and incited protests, culminating in Mossadegh's arrest and the reinstatement of the Shah, who handed 40% of Iran's oil fields to US companies. The Iranian coup was the first foreign intervention orchestrated by the CIA that overthrew a democratically elected government. Its success set a dangerous precedent for more meddling in coups across the world. Just 1 year later, in 1954, the US once again decided it needed to dispose of a foreign leader in favor of a Western sympathizer. This time, it was Guatemalan President Jacobo Arbenz, due to what the US viewed as communist-leaning reforms that would compromise the exploitative labor practices of the United Fruit Company, an American corporation. With a $2.7 million budget, the CIA armed and trained Carlos Castillo Armas, a Guatemalan exile, and supported his force of 480 men in launching a military invasion from Honduras. Psychological warfare through fake radio broadcasts, aerial bombings, and disinformation sowed fear among the public and the country's forces, leading the Guatemalan army to stand down. The coup ushered in decades of brutal military junta, repression, and civil war that claimed hundreds of thousands of lives. For the United States, however, the coup served its purpose: to set an example for any Latin American nation seeking progressive reform that it would suffer a bleak fate. With 2 successful regime changes under its belt, the CIA took its foreign policy of covert intervention even further. Declassified CIA documents confirm the agency's financial aid and encouragement of coups and assassinations across the Democratic Republic of Congo, South Vietnam, Brazil, and Indonesia. Though the agency did not directly mastermind the operations, the CIA played a supporting role in the 1961 killing of DRC's first Prime Minister, Patrice Lumumba, and in the 1963 assassination of South Vietnamese President Ngo Dinh Diem and his brother. Some attempts to get rid of world leaders proved fruitless, however. In the 1960s, the CIA tried everything from exploding cigars, poisonous pills, to kill Cuban leader Fidel Castro, but to no avail. By 1973, Washington had been fiddling around with the internal affairs of Chile for nearly a decade before President Salvador Allende, who had pledged to nationalize the country's copper industry, was overthrown in a military coup. US efforts in Chile paved the way for the brutal 17-year reign of Augusto Pinochet, during which thousands were killed or tortured. The same scenario played out during the 1980s in Nicaragua. Paramilitary Contra rebels sought to overthrow the socialist Sandinista government and were discreetly backed by the US with secret financial and military assistance, despite Congress prohibiting any aid. The CIA's covert actions followed a similar pattern: fund insurgency, destabilize and spread chaos to clear out democratically elected leaders and make way for pro-Western leadership under the guise of fighting communism. This covert interference and propping up of authoritarian regimes invariably made the US complicit in the torture and killing of hundreds of thousands of civilians. For a decade, the US used Afghanistan as a proxy battleground to confront the Soviet Union by funding and arming Afghan Mujahideen fighters. This effort began months before the Soviet invasion of the country in 1979, as opposition to Kabul's communist government was growing. Seeing an opportunity to provoke the Soviets into a costly conflict, the CIA funneled billions of dollars towards anti-communist fighters to fight a brutal decade-long war against the Soviets, ultimately ending in a Soviet withdrawal. Following the 9/11 attacks, the CIA under the Bush administration committed depraved acts of torture, or as they phrased it, enhanced interrogation techniques, with complete impunity in the name of national security. Torture is a crime under US and international law, but the CIA found a way around it by using a skewed definition of torture. As long as detainees did not suffer organ failure, impairment of bodily function, or death, the CIA was immune. The agency captured dozens of men across the world and interrogated them using torturous methods in secret locations overseas known as black sites, where detainees could be held without trial. The cruel torture techniques aimed to break these men mentally and physically. Detainees were deprived of sleep for days on end, their legs and arms chained in painful positions, and their heads slammed into walls in a practice called walling. The CIA's torture methods also reportedly included waterboarding, an illegal practice in which a person is pinned down at an incline with a cloth covering his face, while water is poured onto his breathing passages to simulate drowning. Other practices included humiliation tactics, such as rectal abuse, stripping the prisoners of their clothes for prolonged periods, and forcing them to wear diapers.
The Americans forcibly gave me an enema. I don't know why they did this to me, and the pain was terrible. They searched my body with their hands and took pictures of me naked. I was blindfolded and shackled at both my hands and feet with metal cuffs. Someone put a diaper on me and secured it with duct tape.
Once again, the CIA was never held accountable for the torture it conducted in the aftermath of 9/11, despite clear evidence of abuse uncovered in multiple investigations and the revelation of 26 detainees wrongfully held by the agency. Under the Obama administration, drone warfare became a key feature of the country's foreign policy, with the CIA closely involved.
So this is a just war. A war waged proportionally, in last resort, and in self-defense.
Unlike the US military, the intelligence agency carried out what it claimed were targeted killings in countries where US forces were not conducting military activities, including Yemen, Somalia, and Pakistan. The agency often relied on signature strikes targeting individuals based on behavioral patterns rather than confirmed identity, a tactic that killed hundreds of civilians, including children. From mind control experiments to black site torture, coup plots to drone assassinations, the CIA's record is not one of safeguarding security, but of spreading fear, silencing dissent, and crushing any challenge to US dominance in the world. How many more lives must be lost and nations destroyed before the world holds the US apparatus accountable?
You face down our enemies, you protect our families, you stand and watch over our great nation. America is forever grateful.